Isabella Monroe had spent over a decade climbing the corporate ladder at Nova Tech Solutions, a cutting-edge tech firm nestled high above the bustling streets of downtown Seattle. Known for her razor-sharp intellect and relentless work ethic, Isabella wasn't just an engineer, she was the creative force behind the company's groundbreaking analytics platform that was quietly revolutionizing the industry. At 38, she carried the calm confidence of someone who had weathered countless storms. Yet her eyes still burned with the fire of ambition. The office was a sleek glass tower, reflecting the gray skies of the Pacific Northwest, but beneath its polished surface lurked an undercurrent of tension Isabella had learned to navigate carefully. The politics of corporate life were rarely blatant, instead, they played out in hushed whispers, sidelong glances, and carefully choreographed smiles. She had trusted people, especially Vivian Clark, once a close friend turned head of human resources, and Malcolm Hayes, the charming but ruthless COO. But trust, Isabella was discovering, was a fragile thing. That chilly morning, as she waited quietly outside a conference room, she overheard a conversation that would change everything, one that would shatter the illusion of safety she had built around herself. The moment Isabella overheard the hushed conversation outside the glass-paneled conference room was the moment everything changed. It was early morning, the office still quiet except for the distant hum of the city below. She hadn't planned to eavesdrop, she was just waiting, 10 minutes early for the strategic planning meeting. But the door wasn't fully closed, and what she heard froze her in place. Inside, the voices were unmistakable: Malcolm Hayes, Novatech's silver-tongued COO, and Vivian Clark, the new head of human resources and, until recently, someone Isabella had considered a trusted ally. Their words sliced through the calm of the morning like shards of ice. "Vivian, we can't keep Isabella running the Svanta project," Malcolm said, voice low but sharp. "She's brilliant, yes, but she makes people nervous. We need a leader who inspires confidence, not fear." Vivian's voice was measured, clinical almost. "I know, she's done incredible work, but this is bigger than just results. It's about the brand, the culture. We have to protect the image. Isabella's too much of a wildcard." Malcolm chuckled, but it was a brittle sound, like breaking glass. "Exactly. We'll give her the award. Let her have her moment in the spotlight. But after that, we move forward cleanly. Without her." Isabella's heart hammered in her chest. The award, the ceremony, it wasn't a celebration, it was a farewell, disguised in glittering light and applause. She stood frozen, the corridor suddenly too cold. Her breath caught in her throat as the realization settled like a stone in her stomach. For 11 years, Isabella had poured her blood, sweat, and sleepless nights into Nova Tech. She was the architect of the platform that had resurrected the company from near collapse, a complex, elegant system that had secured the multi-million-dollar deal with Svanta, the company's lifeline. She hadn't just built technology, she'd built hope. Yet here she was, cast out quietly, erased from the story she had written. Back at her desk on the 27th floor, she gazed out over the sprawling cityscape. The Seattle skyline was a grid of glowing lights and moving shadows. As contained and manageable as the situation she now faced, or so it seemed. The betrayal was subtle, but unmistakable. She didn't cry. She didn't storm the boardroom. Instead, she sat still, letting the quiet knowing seep into her bones. They were cutting her out. The next day, something unexpected happened. A call came from Svanta. Morgan Levant, their chief innovation officer, said simply, "We've reviewed your proposal. $800 million over 5 years. We want you to lead this project personally. Isabella, without you, we won't sign." Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just validation, it was a lifeline. The company that wanted her leadership was external, global, powerful, but inside Nova Tech, things were fracturing. At the executive update meeting, Malcolm's eyes barely met hers. Vivian's smile was tight, brittle. "Clients don't usually dictate project management," Vivian said, her tone dripping with a kind of condescension. Malcolm nodded slowly, masking the storm brewing behind his calm facade. Isabella's voice was steady as she laid out the project requirements: full access, dedicated DevOps support, phased implementation with scalable architecture. "We're not just delivering software. We're rebuilding the company's future." Malcolm gave a faint nod. "Legal will draft the contracts." "Congrats." But the cold edge in his voice was unmistakable. Outside the meeting room, the familiar hum of hope was replaced by an icy chill. Isabella knew they were preparing to push her out, to dismantle everything she had built piece by piece. She wasn't naive, she'd learned to read the signs, missed meetings, avoided eye contact, exclusion from critical emails, but she refused to fold. In the privacy of her office, she dusted off an old, untraceable laptop from her freelance days, hidden beneath vendor legal archives. It was clean, disconnected from company surveillance. There, she began crafting Project Aegis, a new version of the platform she had built. Stripped entirely of Novatech's resources, built on her own code and open-source frameworks, Aegis wasn't just a mirror, it was a fortress. Embedded deep within was a silent audit system, logging every unauthorized access attempt, every suspicious download, every breach of trust. Within days, Aegis had recorded dozens of unauthorized probes. Vivian's name appeared repeatedly, pulling progress reports, downloading raw data, preparing for an inevitable move. Meanwhile, the facade at Novatech held. The client dashboard functioned smoothly. Weekly deliverables arrived on time. But under the surface, the cracks deepened. Isabella tightened security measures, biometric admin controls, remote deactivation protocols. If anyone tried to hijack her platform, Aegis could remotely disable the corrupted version, rendering Novatech's system useless. In meetings, Isabella played the loyal engineer. She smiled at Malcolm's backhanded compliments and nodded as Vivian suggested pointless, strategic changes she had no intention of implementing. Little did they know, they were walking on the glass floors she had designed, floors that would crack beneath their feet when the time came. The pivotal moment came in the 10th floor conference room, the one Isabella had once dominated with her presentations on AI and infrastructure deployment. Now, she sat at the far end of the table, silenced, sidelined. Malcolm opened the meeting with glowing revenue projections and congratulated the team on the Svanta deal, carefully omitting Isabella's name, despite the contract naming her as the essential lead. Vivian smirked as she called Isabella's technical expertise tactical, rather than strategic, a subtle dismissal that cut deeper than any insult. The meeting moved on without a word of challenge. The room recoiled from Isabella's presence as if she were a ghost haunting a place she once ruled. Afterwards, Vivian caught her by the elevator. Syrupy and cold. "Don't take this personally. It's politics," she said. Isabella said nothing, because it was personal. It was deliberate erasure. And the worst betrayal wasn't the quiet shove out of the boardroom, but the loss of trust from David Lynn, the closest friend she had made over the years. Their morning coffee ritual dissolved without explanation. Texts went unanswered. The safe haven in a noisy office became a cold reminder of isolation. Isabella realized she was no longer part of the team. She was alone, and from that moment, she acted like it. Betrayal, she learned, didn't roar. It whispered in legal footnotes, in excluded email threads, in carefully drafted termination packets. When the accidental leak of her offboarding papers arrived days before the awards ceremony, Isabella felt nothing but a quiet fury. They handed her a crystal award on stage, applause ringing hollow, while slipping a termination letter into her hand. But Isabella had already rewritten the rules. Project Aegis was live, protected by ironclad licensing clauses and silent watchdogs. The system they thought belonged to Novatech was hers to control. She'd woven in tripwires that would bring down the company's fragile empire if they crossed the line. The storm was coming, and Isabella was ready, not with rage, but with unshakable calm. The days after the executive update meeting felt like walking through a dream Isabella wished she could wake from. Novatech's glossy facade remained intact, but beneath it, the forces that threatened to dismantle everything she had built were gathering speed. She tried to focus on the work she loved, the deep dive into code, architecture, and analytics, but even that became a battlefield. Then came the email that shattered any remaining illusions. It arrived in her personal inbox on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Subject line curt and clinical. Final NDA and transition plan. Attached was a cold termination packet, official, signed, and dated 4 days before the company's upcoming awards ceremony, the very event where she was to be publicly honored. The letter thanked her for contributions but made clear Novatech was moving in a new direction. Severance offered, legal clauses demanding silence and cooperation outlined, and, chillingly, drafted and approved by Vivian Clark and Malcolm Hayes. Isabella stared at the screen, pulse slowing as shock turned to a quiet, burning resolve. This wasn't a mistake or oversight. It was a calculated move. executed with surgical precision. They had planned this long ago, cloaked it in pleasantries, and now presented her with a fait accompli. The award, the applause, it was a mask, a public spectacle to soften the blow of her erasure. But Isabella wasn't one to crumble under deceit. That evening, alone in her apartment, she revisited Project Aegis, the secret system she'd built in parallel to Novatech's platform. Unlike the company's official product, Aegis was her fortress. It ran on a clean, independent codebase, fully licensed under her control. It had layers of encryption, biometric protections, and a silent audit trail that tracked every unauthorized touch. As she scrolled through the logs, her eyes narrowed. Vivian's name appeared again and again: unauthorized downloads, data scraping, covert attempts to copy core modules. They were preparing for a hostile takeover of her work, attempting to rewrite the future without her. Isabella smiled faintly. Let them try. The next morning, she made a bold call. She reached out to Leah Morton, the former CTO of Ordo, a boutique consultancy firm with a growing reputation. Leah was known for cutting through corporate noise and building scalable, agile systems in industries desperate for innovation. Leah answered on the third ring, her voice cool but curious. Isabella wasted no time explaining the situation, the betrayal, the stolen leadership, and most importantly, the opportunity. I have the architecture, the framework, Isabella said, but I need a partner who understands its value and is willing to build something new. Not just a rebuild, but a reinvention. Leah's pause was telling. Then, send me an overview. I want to see the roadmap by tomorrow noon. If it's real, we'll get the team together. That was all Isabella needed. Over the next days, she poured herself into the transition documents, polishing the integration protocols, revising load balancing strategies, and creating a comprehensive but concise roadmap. She no longer worked for Novatech, she worked for the future she was carving with her own hands. Meanwhile, back at Novatech, the political chess game accelerated. Malcolm and Vivian scrambled to contain the fallout, but cracks were spreading. Employees whispered in corridors. The engineering team, once energized by the Svanta deal, began to sense the growing rift. At a high-level strategy meeting, Isabella sat quietly as Malcolm presented projections that conveniently minimized her contributions. Vivian praised collaborative leadership without naming names, while Isabella was excluded from critical decisions. But beneath the surface, Aegis was watching. Isabella's system logged every access, every download, every suspicious login attempt. She knew that her former colleagues didn't realize the system they controlled was already hollow, functioning on autopilot, decoupled from the core logic only she could command. One afternoon, an unexpected alert came through. Multiple failed login attempts flagged as high risk. Isabella's heart quickened, but she maintained her calm. Someone was trying to break in, someone desperate to reclaim control. She immediately triggered the remote deactivation protocol. The Aegis instance running on Novatech's servers entered a lockdown mode, refusing to execute any commands without biometric verification, something only Isabella could provide. The retaliation was swift. Legal teams scrambled, internal memos leaked, investors grew anxious, but Isabella had played her cards well. Then came the breaking point. At 10:07 a.m. one bright morning, the breach attempt escalated into a full replication effort. Novatech's team tried to duplicate the analytics framework, bypassing the critical oversight clause Isabella had embedded in the Svanta contract. The clause made the license conditional on her continued leadership. The unauthorized sync attempt triggered the final protocol in Aegis, the digital tripwire Isabella had coded late into the night weeks earlier. In an instant, the system launched an encrypted, timestamped report detailing every violation, unauthorized data extractions, breaches of contract, leadership exclusions, all meticulously documented. That report was automatically sent to 3 key recipients: the Sex Whistleblower Division, Svanta's legal team, and a senior editor at Future Ledger, a respected tech industry publication. Within hours, the industry buzzed with breaking news. Svanta publicly announced its immediate withdrawal from all contracts with Novatech, citing integrity concerns and licensing violations. The market responded brutally. Novatech's stock plummeted 39% in a single afternoon. Internal emails leaked, exposing the power plays, backdoor deals, and duplicity of Malcolm and Vivian. Rumors swirled about impending resignations. The company's carefully crafted narrative of innovation and partnership unraveled spectacularly. Isabella watched the chaos unfold with a strange sense of peace. This was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming control. About making sure her work, and her name, were protected. In the weeks that followed, headlines celebrated the rise of a new player, Novax. The consultancy firm Isabella had partnered with to relaunch her platform as Athena Insight. Athena Insight wasn't just a product, it was a statement. Faster, smarter, more resilient. It quickly gained traction with new clients and energy, logistics, and even government agencies. Isabella finally had a team that saw her as a leader, not a liability. The final irony came in a voicemail from Vivian, her voice trembling beneath the polished veneer. Asking for a private conversation. A chance to explain. Isabella listened once, then again, before drafting a single message. I taught you loyalty. You taught me war. No send button. No anger. Just the quiet reminder that she had already moved beyond the battlefield. After the storm, silence settled in like a thick fog, heavy, cold, and strangely cleansing. Isabella sat alone in her new office at Novax. The soft hum of her laptop the only sound filling the room. The sprawling Seattle skyline stretched beyond the window. But this time, it felt different, less like a cage and more like an open horizon. The betrayal she had endured at Novatech wasn't just a professional setback. It was a fundamental rupture in how she saw herself and the world around her. For years, Isabella had believed that hard work, loyalty, and results would secure her place at the table. She had built bridges, mentored others, and led teams with quiet determination. But those bridges had been burned from the inside, her loyalty weaponized against her. Now, she understood something vital. In corporate politics, power didn't come from titles or applause. It was about control over information, access, and narrative. The very company she had saved tried to erase her. Not because she lacked talent, but because she was too powerful to contain. That realization sparked a profound shift in Isabella's perspective. She thought back to the early days at Novatech, when the company was scrappy, full of raw energy and unrefined dreams. She and David Lin had shared coffee every morning, their quiet rituals a refuge from the storm. But even that connection had faltered under pressure. Fear had a way of isolating people, turning allies into bystanders. Isabella's loneliness was not weakness, it was the cost of clarity. She saw now that the real battleground wasn't the boardroom or the code. It was the stories people told themselves about who deserved to lead and who was expendable. She had been cast as too technical for leadership, a wrench in the toolbox, when in truth, she was the architect of the future they claimed to want. That cynical irony fueled her next moves. Isabella began to view her work not just as a series of projects, but as a legacy. Athena Insight wasn't just software, it was a manifesto of autonomy, resilience, and justice. Every line of code was a statement that brilliance could not be silenced by politics. She also embraced a new understanding of leadership. It wasn't about fitting in or playing safe. It was about standing firm in one's truth, even when the world tried to rewrite it. This mindset transformed her approach to her new role at Novax. Rather than chase approval, Isabella focused on building a culture that valued transparency, collaboration, and respect. She hired diverse teams who challenged assumptions and celebrated innovation without fear. Meetings were open forums, not staged performances. Success was shared, not hoarded. And slowly, the isolation she had felt began to dissolve. Colleagues gravitated to her authenticity and clarity. Clients respected her vision because it was grounded in experience, not empty promises. The scars of betrayal became badges of resilience, stories she shared with new hires as lessons in strength. Isabella's relationship with power evolved too. She no longer feared it nor craved its superficial rewards. Instead, she cultivated influence through integrity and strategic foresight. She knew when to push forward and when to hold back, when to speak and when to listen. The echoes of Novatech's betrayal remained, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they sharpened her resolve. Isabella also re-examined her sense of hope. It wasn't naive optimism but a quiet, stubborn hum beneath the noise of corporate battles. Hope became a compass guiding her through uncertainty, a reminder that the future could be different if she dared to shape it. She reflected on the final moments before her departure from Novatech, the awards ceremony, the staged applause, the hollow smiles. She realized that public recognition without respect was a fragile thing. True acknowledgement came from owning one's work, defending one's value, and refusing to be erased. Her silent war had never been about revenge. It was about dignity and the right to lead on her terms. Isabella began sharing her story more openly, not to dwell on pain, but to inspire others who felt sidelined or underestimated. She spoke at conferences, mentored young women in tech, and advocated for equitable leadership practices. Each conversation reinforced her belief that the strongest move sometimes was to walk away from a broken system and build something better. That belief propelled Athena Insight's rapid growth. Clients saw the difference. A platform born from struggle but designed for sustainable success. Investors trusted a leader who had proven she could weather storms and emerge stronger. And within herself, Isabella found peace, no longer haunted by betrayal. She embraced it as a catalyst, a reminder that setbacks could fuel transformation. She realized that power, real power, was patient and strategic. It moved quietly, like the undercurrent of a river, always present, always shaping the course ahead. Isabella's journey had come full circle. From a loyal engineer eager to prove herself, to a betrayed innovator forced into exile, to a visionary leader defining her own destiny. The glass ceiling she had once seen as a barrier was now a transparent stage upon which she performed with grace and authority. And as she looked toward the future, Isabella knew one thing for certain: she would never again let anyone else write her story. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Novax's newly leased office space, casting long, warm beams over the sleek desks and buzzing workstations. Isabella Monroe sat at the head of a conference table, her eyes scanning a detailed integration plan she had just finalized with her team. The air was thick with anticipation. This was no longer about survival, but about building a future on her own terms. After the collapse of her former employer, Nova Tech, and the public fallout that followed, Isabella had found herself at a crossroads. Many would have crumbled under the weight of betrayal, but for her, it ignited a fire that refused to be extinguished. Novax was more than just a fresh start, it was a sanctuary for her vision. A place where innovation wasn't stifled by politics but fueled by collaboration. The opportunity had come unexpectedly but perfectly timed. Leah Morton, the dynamic former CTO of Ordo, had become her partner and ally. Together, they had reimagined the platform Isabella once built, a sleek, smarter, and more adaptable system they named Athena Insight. The name was fitting. In mythology, Athena was the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, a perfect symbol for their mission. Isabella's new project was more than just technology, it was a statement. Athena Insight was designed to empower clients with real-time analytics, predictive insights, and seamless scalability. More importantly, it was a reflection of Isabella's belief in transparency, integrity, and leadership grounded in authenticity. Word spread quickly in industry circles. The same clients who had once hesitated at Novatech were now reaching out to Novax, eager to partner with a team that valued innovation over hierarchy and results over lip service. Within weeks, Isabella secured 2 major contracts, one in clean energy and another in logistics, each worth millions and offering opportunities to showcase Athena Insight's capabilities on a grand scale. Her mornings filled with strategy sessions and technical deep dives. Isabella balanced visionary leadership with hands-on problem-solving. She wasn't just the CEO, she was still the architect, the engineer, and the mentor. Every line of code, every integration detail, bore her mark. But with new opportunity came new challenges. Scaling a startup was vastly different from navigating a corporate giant. Resources were tighter, stakes were higher, and every decision carried weight far beyond the immediate impact. Isabella faced pressure from investors hungry for rapid growth, competitors eager to capitalize on Novatech's downfall, and the constant need to prove herself all over again. Yet, the lessons from her past fueled her resilience. She had learned that true leadership meant embracing vulnerability and fostering trust. She prioritized building a culture where team members felt safe to take risks, voice ideas, and grow. Regular town halls replaced closed-door meetings, and feedback loops became integral to their process. Isabella also made a point to nurture the next generation of leaders, especially women in tech, offering mentorship programs and advocating for equitable opportunities. She remembered too well the isolation she had felt when sidelined at Nova Tech, and she was determined to create a different environment at Novax. One particularly challenging afternoon, the team faced a critical integration issue with a new client's legacy system, a problem that could delay deployment and jeopardize their contract. As the clock ticked down, tension rose. Isabella gathered the engineers in the war room, encouraging open dialogue and collaborative problem-solving. "We're not just fixing bugs," she reminded them, voice steady but passionate. "We're building trust. Every challenge we overcome makes us stronger." The breakthrough came after hours of iteration and late-night testing. The system stabilized, the client's data flowed smoothly, and a collective sigh of relief filled the room. That moment wasn't just a technical win, it was a testament to the power of perseverance and teamwork. As the weeks turned into months, Athena Insight's reputation grew. Industry publications began to spotlight Novax as a rising star, and Isabella was invited to speak at major conferences. Each appearance was an opportunity not only to showcase their technology but to share her story, the challenges, the betrayals, and the relentless pursuit of ownership and respect. Despite the growing success, Isabella never forgot the quiet moments of doubt and loneliness she had faced. She kept her morning ritual, coffee and quiet reflection at a small cafe near the office. It was a grounding practice that reminded her of the journey, the sacrifices, and the strength forged in adversity. One evening, as she closed her laptop after a particularly productive day, Isabella received a message from an old friend, David Lynn. Their paths had diverged after Nova Tech, but the message was simple: "Proud of you. Let's catch up soon." It wasn't an apology or a promise, just a bridge extended. Isabella smiled softly. The past was a chapter, but the future was hers to write. In that moment, she realized the true meaning of opportunity. It wasn't just about new contracts or technological breakthroughs, it was about reclaiming agency, rewriting the narrative, and building a legacy that could not be erased. Novax wasn't just a company, it was a movement, and Isabella Monroe was its unstoppable force. The transition from survivor to leader wasn't instantaneous for Isabella Monroe. It was a process, a series of internal shifts and external challenges that forced her to redefine herself beyond the betrayal and loss. At Novax, surrounded by a team that believed in her vision, Isabella found space not only to rebuild her career but to evolve into the kind of leader she had always aspired to be. Early on, Isabella recognized that leadership wasn't just about strategy or technical expertise. It was about emotional intelligence, resilience, and the courage to be vulnerable in front of others. After years of navigating corporate politics with quiet determination, she now embraced openness and authenticity as tools of strength. She started small, in meetings. Instead of masking doubts or brushing off challenges, Isabella shared the realities of her journey, the setbacks, the moments of isolation, and the hard-won lessons. Her honesty fostered trust, creating a culture where her team felt safe to bring their whole selves to work. This atmosphere sparked creativity and loyalty that no hierarchical title could buy. Isabella also learned the power of delegation. Where before she had felt compelled to carry every burden herself, she began empowering her colleagues, listening actively, nurturing talents, and encouraging autonomy. She realized that leadership was not control, but the art of enabling others to shine. One of her proudest moments came when she mentored a young engineer named Zoe, a brilliant but hesitant coder struggling with imposter syndrome. Isabella saw herself in Zoe, the same brilliance tempered by self-doubt. Through patient guidance and candid conversations, she helped Zoe build confidence, encouraging her to take risks and own her contributions. Watching Zoe lead her first successful project was a reminder that growth was contagious. But growth also meant confronting her own limits. Isabella grappled with moments of self-doubt, the lingering shadows of past betrayals threatening to erode her confidence. There were days when the weight of expectation felt overwhelming, when the pressure to succeed for herself and her team threatened to crack her resolve. In those moments, she found solace in mindfulness practices, meditation, journaling, and quiet walks through the city parks. These rituals grounded her, helping to balance the relentless pace of startup life with inner calm. Isabella's perspective on success deepened. It was no longer about external validation or climbing the corporate ladder. Success meant integrity, aligning actions with values, cultivating meaningful relationships, and creating sustainable impact. She also embraced the importance of work-life integration. Where once she had sacrificed personal time for professional demands, Isabella now prioritized balance, setting boundaries that honored her well-being without compromising her commitment. This shift was reflected in her leadership style. She encouraged flexibility, mental health awareness, and open communication within Novax, fostering an environment where people could thrive both professionally and personally. As Athena Insight gained market traction, Isabella's growth became visible not only in her company's performance but in the way she carried herself. Her presence in meetings was calm but commanding, her voice steady and inspiring. She had transformed from the overlooked engineer into a visionary leader who could navigate complexity without losing sight of humanity. Isabella also expanded her influence beyond Novax. She became an advocate for women in technology, speaking at conferences, participating in panels, and partnering with organizations dedicated to diversity and inclusion. Her story resonated with many, proof that setbacks could be catalysts for profound transformation. Through mentorship programs, she supported emerging leaders, sharing not just technical knowledge but the wisdom gained from navigating a system that often undervalued her worth. She emphasized the importance of owning one's narrative and standing firm in the face of adversity. Yet, despite all her growth, Isabella remained humble. She knew the journey was ongoing, that leadership was a continual evolution. She welcomed feedback, sought counsel from trusted advisors, and stayed curious about new perspectives. One defining moment came during a strategic retreat with her leadership team. Faced with a challenging decision about expanding into a new market, the group was divided. Some urged caution, others aggressive growth. Isabella listened deeply, then shared her view, not from a place of certainty, but grounded in experience. Growth is vital, she said, but it must be sustainable and aligned with our values. We don't just want to build a company, we want to build a legacy. Her words shifted the conversation, steering the team toward a balanced strategy that honored innovation and responsibility. Isabella's growth was also reflected in her relationship with power. No longer did she seek it for control or recognition. Instead, she wielded it as stewardship, a responsibility to uplift others, to protect her vision, and to create spaces where creativity and courage could flourish. She understood now that power was patient, strategic, and often invisible. It was the quiet influence that shaped culture, the decisions made behind the scenes, and the integrity maintained in moments of pressure. Looking back, Isabella saw how the betrayals at Novatech had been painful but necessary catalysts. They forced her to confront the limits of loyalty and the importance of self-ownership. They propelled her toward a leadership style that was both fierce and compassionate. The woman who stood at the helm of Novax was not the same Isabella who once accepted a hollow award while her termination was secretly processed. She was stronger, wiser, and unshakably grounded. And as Athena Insight continued to grow, so did Isabella, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, guided by a vision of leadership that was not just about success, but about meaning. The ballroom at the Grand Meridian Hotel gleamed under cascading chandeliers, each crystal prism catching the light and scattering it like sparks of hope across the elegant crowd. Tonight was a celebration, but it was unlike any Isabella Monroe had ever attended. This was no longer a bittersweet stage set for hollow applause or veiled betrayals. It was a true recognition of resilience, leadership, and the triumph of integrity. Isabella stood near the entrance, her posture poised yet relaxed, eyes scanning the faces of industry leaders, partners, and colleagues who had gathered to witness Novax's official launch party. The room buzzed with energy, the kind that comes from knowing a new era has begun. Months of tireless work, late nights, and unyielding focus had culminated in this moment. As she stepped onto the stage to deliver her keynote speech, memories flooded back, of glass ceilings shattered, friendships lost, and battles fought in silence. But there was no bitterness in her voice. Instead, there was clarity, strength, and an unwavering conviction. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady and warm, "for believing in a vision that many thought impossible, for standing by a platform built not just on code, but on the courage to keep moving forward in the face of adversity." She paused, letting the words sink in. "My journey hasn't been easy. I've faced betrayal, exclusion, and doubt, but those challenges became the foundation for something greater. Because when you are stripped of everything, titles, recognition, even trust, you are left with one thing: yourself." The crowd listened intently as Isabella shared her story, not as a victim, but as a builder of her own destiny. She spoke of the silent battles fought behind closed doors, the quiet fires kindled in lonely moments, and the power of reclaiming one's narrative. "This is not just my story," she continued. "It's the story of anyone who's been overlooked, underestimated, or erased. It's a testament to the idea that true leadership isn't granted, it's earned. Every day, through resilience, integrity, and the refusal to be defined by others. She glanced around the room, eyes meeting those of her team members, her partners, and even some former colleagues who had once doubted her. Athena Insight represents more than technology. It embodies accountability, transparency, and the unbreakable spirit of innovation. As applause filled the room, Isabella felt a wave of gratitude, not for the accolades, but for the journey itself. The very trials that had threatened to break her had forged her into a leader who could inspire others to rise. Later, mingling among guests, Isabella was approached by young professionals seeking advice, industry veterans offering congratulations, and journalists eager to capture the essence of her leadership. She answered each with kindness and humility, reminding herself that success was not a destination, but a continuous path. Outside the glow of the party, beneath the quiet Seattle sky, Isabella reflected on how far she had come. The woman who once stood alone, silenced and sidelined, now commanded respect not through titles or power plays, but through authenticity and unwavering vision. She thought of Vivian Clark and Malcolm Hayes, the architects of her exile. Their attempts to erase her had only underscored the value of what she brought to the table. They had underestimated the quiet strength of a woman who refused to be forgotten. Isabella's phone buzzed, a message from Leah Morden, her trusted partner and friend. Tonight was just the beginning. It was a reminder that the journey ahead was vast and full of promise. With renewed determination, Isabella knew that Athena Insight would not only transform industries but also redefine what it meant to lead with purpose. Her story was now a beacon for others, proof that sometimes the greatest victories come not from fighting louder, but from standing taller. In that moment, Isabella Monroe wasn't just a survivor or a leader. She was a symbol of what's possible when courage meets opportunity, and when one refuses to let their light be dimmed. Isabella's journey teaches us a vital truth. Real power and success don't come from loud declarations or hollow titles, they come from resilience, strategic patience, and owning your worth even when the world tries to erase you. Betrayal and setbacks are inevitable in any career, but they don't define you unless you let them. Instead of letting others write your story, take control, build your legacy with integrity, foresight, and relentless dedication. True leadership means embracing vulnerability, learning from adversity, and creating spaces where innovation and authenticity thrive. It's about standing firm when others doubt you, nurturing the next generation, and refusing to compromise your values for convenience. Isabella's experience reminds us that sometimes, the strongest move is to walk away from broken systems and build something new, a future where your contributions are recognized and respected. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or sidelined at work, take a page from Isabella's story. Start by valuing your unique skills and contributions, document your achievements, protect your work, and advocate for yourself with clarity and confidence. Don't be afraid to set boundaries or seek new opportunities that align with your values and vision. Build a network of trusted allies who support your growth, and don't hesitate to invest in your own development, whether through mentorship, continued learning, or personal reflection. When faced with setbacks, pause and reassess your path rather than reacting impulsively. Strategic patience can turn obstacles into opportunities. Remember, your name belongs on the work you create. Protect it fiercely, stand behind it proudly, and never let anyone else define your worth. Like Isabella, you can transform challenges into stepping stones toward a leadership role that's authentically yours. Thank you for choosing to listen to this story among thousands of stories out there. Like and subscribe to continue listening to the latest stories.